just praise Yah just for the opportunity to get into the word tonight. Um, just thankful to him for my sisters that are on with us tonight. Um, just thankful for the ability to just be able to um, really just have that opportunity to grow and to look into his scriptures, and find jewels, find wonderful things out of it. Um, I was speaking with Carletta. That was, I think that was when Moramoka was in town, and we were talking about. She was asking me if I would help or if I would come on and talk about the Hebrew midwives. And at that time, everything was like in chaos mode. Um, the the location we was in, the plumbing started going haywire and crazy. Um, I think I just had there was a lot of things that was going on, but at that time, that was one of the situations that was unfolding, and we ended up having to leave early just because we didn't have the bathroom. And so anyway, there was just like the food wasn't warming up fast enough. I left out the house and my dress got ripped on the way out the house. It was just like a lot of things was going on. And so whenever she was talking to me about it, it kind of like just went over my head. And then I had to come back and say, I'm so sorry. Like I want to do it. My brain just couldn't take in so many things. Um, but I think that as we kind of start looking at the Hebrew midwives today, I'll just have some encouragement on that, so that maybe the next time I'm experiencing a situation like that, I won't react in the same way because we I think I tend to react to situations as they come instead of looking at things from a holistic point of view. Because at this point in my life, I don't even remember hardly all of the situations that was happening in that moment. I just remember the stress of that moment. And Carletta, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just wanted to add, you felt that, you didn't have it together when I asked you or when you were answering me, but I don't even think that you skipped a beat. I mean, it wasn't even a hesitation. You was like, yes, yes, I can do that, definitely. And
Okay.
then I think you immediately, like in your mind, you might have thought that it was like a delay in a thought process or maybe even a phase. But to me, I mean, never even
It was
skipped a beat.
regular.
You just, yeah, it was just like, I accept, Father. Yes, Father. Father asked you for a mission. You said, sign me up. So it didn't look on my
It did on the
end.
outside, in the brain
Yeah,
though. In the
yes.
brain.
On the outside, you look like, oh, okay, she's good with it. But in the
I'm
inside,
always on. I'm
yeah,
never off. I'm always on. But
absolutely.
I did definitely my mind was going so fast with everything. And I felt a delay in my own brain that I addressed. And I did address it. So thank you for being so gracious, Carletta, on that. But what we're going to talk about is Shiphrah and Puah, the Hebrew midwives, and so it's interesting because we were just recently in this section of scripture within the Torah portions, um, and also if anyone knows, we study the Torah extensively in our ministry. And so this is just a subject that comes up, um, over and over again. And so some of the things that I'm talking about are definitely borrowed from our study and from my husband's notes that he takes, that he writes down for the midrash. But just kind of starting out thinking about the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. I'm just thinking about the birth of Israel and how the birth of Israel took place. Um, and where does the Torah begin the narrative of the birth of the nation of Israel? And so you look at Israel, and as a nation, it's like they become a nation at Mount Sinai with the giving of the Ten Commandments. At least that's where I begin Israel as kind of being like this nation, this peculiar treasure of the Most High. When they officially say I do, now they are literally the nation of Israel. And so looking at that birth process, and we see all of the things that took place, and including Yah's claim to fame, which is the 10 plagues, concluding with the birth of the firstborn. Um, and that's why at that Mount Sinai, he says, I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. This is literally Yah's claim to fame forever. And so when we begin that whole journey, where does it begin? It begins at Shiphrah and Puah. It begins at this story, um, where Pharaoh, this new Pharaoh comes along that begins to oppress the people, which snowballs into the need for a deliverer, the need for deliverance, which snowballs into Moses coming on the scene, and Yah delivering his people out of Egypt with a great hand. And so when we, this, I'm not a feminist. I think I'm probably the least of feminists, but we see that the birth of the nation is really through, of course, women, but it comes off of the faith of these midwives, and it comes off of the faith of Jochebed, which is Moses' mother, and his sister Miriam. And so we can see how this is kind of like the beginning of this narrative when this new Pharaoh comes on the scene, and now there's a need for deliverance. Before, they were living it up. They were, well, theoretically, I'm not sure how much they were living it up, but they weren't being oppressed. Let's just say that. And now you have a new person who comes on, a new king of Egypt who didn't know who Joseph was. And he said unto his people, behold, the children of Israel are mightier than we. Come on and let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them out of the land. I'm just going to read this section and then we'll go back. Therefore they said, set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. And the king of Egypt spake unto the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared Elohim and did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered before the midwives come in unto them. Therefore Elohim dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared Elohim, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. Hallelujah. So today we're going to talk about the midwives. Um, and to me, when I look at this story, it's a story of fear, and what fear produces. We'll see that fear can produce negative things, and fear can produce positive things. And we're going to just talk about some of these things. We're going to talk about some of the meanings of these women and their names. And we're going to talk about how Pharaoh is trying to use instruments that are to bring about life, to bring about death. Um, and so, but the instruments of life refuse to be turned into instruments of death. So let's go to, we're going to go ahead to verse 23. What? Wait a second. Wait, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I don't know why my notes, um, I don't know why my notes, the numbers they got advanced into like 10 more than what they were. I had 23, but it's really 13. All right, it says, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor. Um, oh, hold on. Wait. My notes, the numbers of the verses in my notes are obviously off. So hopefully I don't have to keep doing this. Okay, here it goes. We're right here in verse 12. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. So we were talking about this word before, and I would like everyone just, you could talk and interrupt. I don't want it just to be so quiet. Um, but we were just talking about this a couple weeks ago on Shabbat, and we were talking about, what fear can do. And this word here, grieved, um, it means, yeah, I don't really use eSword on my, I only use eSword on my computer that often, and I'm on my Mac. Okay, so it says that they were grieved. Um, can you all see the? Is it showing you what the?
Yes.
When I click on it, you can see coots.
Coots in the
Okay,
affirmative.
and unfortunately, um, my eSword on my end of the computer isn't as conclusive and exhaustive. We literally just talked about how the Strong's Concordance, you can't really depend on it to learn all the definitions of words. But when you look at the word grieved in the English, it's really kind of hard to understand that these people were actually, they were distressed, they were anxious, they were scared, um, of the children of Israel. They were getting to be too big. And um, and so it was this fear, when we were talking about this, of them joining in with other armies, that caused Pharaoh to increase their bondage, to put them in bondage, to put them to work, but not just to put them to work, but to, in every single aspect of their work, cause them to have this hard bondage, this hard life. And then they just kept on growing. So every time they would grow, he would just keep increasing the cruelty. And in everything, there was cruelty and harshness. And so, I guess we could open it up, but do you have any thoughts on why, this cruelty and this harshness and this, um, kind of the sky and the ground are going to be, iron, like, the brick and the mortar, um, everything they did, every single, all their service wherein they were made to serve was with rigor. Um, does anyone want to kind of talk about the whys behind that, or the thought process or the mentality behind that? And if not, I could keep going. But I do want to give people opportunity. And let me
Yeah,
see if I can see.
I'm like immediately led to think about a bully and people who may not feel that they may not feel confident in what it is that they have and the power that they have and the position that they're in. And so they use their position of power to oppress and bully and, to try and make things hard on other people to maintain their power and their stature.
Hmm. Yes. And I agree. And that's looking from their perspective. And, when I'm thinking about it also, I'm thinking about it that, the goal is to break the spirit of these people to live, right? And to grow. Even sometimes I hate to say it, but we're in this crazy world right now, and these people are just getting waxing worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, wow, I'm bringing in children into this crazy world, right? But still, there's a commandment to be fruitful and multiply. So it doesn't really matter how wicked this world is. We still have a charge to continue um, the Most High's will and kingdom in this earth. I just heard somebody come on the mic, so oh, go ahead. Oh, you know what? I
It's
did not
okay.
see hands raised. I'm sorry. I just
Yeah,
put
it's okay.
my little. I
Talia.
have one screen, so I'm sorry. But go ahead, Talia.
Who's going first? Me?
You sure can.
Oh, okay. Shabbat shalom. No, I when you were reading the chapter here that I was thinking of, I know when they first entered into Egypt, they were not under bondage. They were actually living pretty well because of Joseph, him being second in command and giving his family land. And then of course, the generations have gone on, moved on, and the king, whoever's the pharaoh that's in charge, doesn't really know that, or at least is honoring that promise that the one before him made, and that they had to get that environment for Israel to be so harsh that they actually started to cry out. Like, it made me think that father had to get that environment so tense and under so much pressure that finally my children are going to cry out to me and make that environment so uncomfortable and so unrelaxed. I have so much more to give you guys. I don't want you being comfortable under somebody else and being somebody's master. So it made me think of that when verse 13 and 14 said, they made their lives bitter. Something had to taste that disgusting in their mouth to say, okay, that's enough. I want to leave here now. I don't want to be here anymore.
And I would
That's what
say
it.
that even at that, they still was dragging their feet to come out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people, you get so comfortable. People, when they get comfortable, they don't want to move. They don't want to move on to the next level. They don't want to. Sometimes it's even hard for them to increase because they get so comfortable wherever they're at. So it's really tough. But every day they woke up, from the time they woke up till the time they went to sleep, was bondage. Did you want to say something, Carletta, before we keep going?
Yeah, I just want to kind of also kind of add to what everyone else was saying. So, I felt like Pharaoh was intimidated by a lot of what he's seen in the Hebrew children. Um, they probably there was probably jealousy there, and because they continued to multiply and grow in great strengths. No matter what he did to try to look or make himself look like the sovereign, the Hebrew children, we have our own ways, and we were greatly favored in many ways in that time. But it, like Sister Talia just said, that he needed to make it into a situation that caused us to leave that area, that wanted, that it was so uncomfortable that we had to leave. They tried to mimic our, they tried to mimic their own, or create their own god or gods. They tried to create their own feast days, at that time. And so no matter what he did, it was never going to measure up to the Father, never going to measure up to Yahweh. And so I think that uh he just felt bitter, like he said. I think someone mentioned that he just felt, bitter that he wasn't going to measure up to this great sovereign. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, and I don't know how much he, because he definitely got introduced to Yod Hey Wah. He definitely got introduced to Yahweh. I think that he there was something, he was so carnal, Pharaoh was, and his mindset just was totally warped, against these people. And again, it was, I know it was definitely a power play, like we were discussing, like what you're saying, and what Shola said earlier. Um, and so, when we're looking at this situation, and one of the things we discussed in our midrash was, that he could have tried to ally with Israel at that time. He could have used the what he thought was something he feared. He could have turned that into a strength. Um, but then again, if he did something like that, Israel would never have come out. We would have been pawns in his his military campaigns. But it's against this backdrop, right? That there's no love for this people. Um, this fear created hatred, it created disgust, right? And it became a situation that necessitated a deliverer. And I think about the scriptures, like it's that Elohim, he's near unto those who call upon him, to those who call upon him in truth. And so a lot of times it's the these type of situations that cause people to cry out to the Father. If you're healthy and feeling well and running a marathon, you're probably not going to be crying out to him, or a person isn't going to be crying out to them as much as they are if they're on their sick bed, you know? And so we're looking at this people that's oppressed. And so now um we come to verse 15. And again, my marks are off here. But it says, "And the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah." And so looking at this is very interesting, because we don't actually know who these people are. We never see them again. We never hear of their lineages. We don't know their starting points or their ending points in this whole story. And but the scripture is so specific that it tells us their names. And there's a lot of scholarly research that has been done on who these people could be, who these women could be. And so I want to talk about two of the thought processes just before we continue on, very briefly. That one of the thought processes, I'll go with the most controversial one first, is that they were Egyptians, that they were Egyptian women, Hebrew midwives, even though it doesn't say midwives of Hebrew women, but it could still be understood as that these women were Egyptian, and they were in the office of midwife. They would be working with some of the well or off people in the city. And it would be understandable that Pharaoh would ask them to be the ones to kill the newborn babies, because they might actually be the ones to do it. And later on, we see that he talks to his own people whenever he starts asking for executioners. He doesn't necessarily go to the Hebrew people. He goes to um, the Egyptians, and he says to his people, kill all the baby boys. So kind of goes along with that. Um, and if they were Egyptian, it would really take this whole thought process to another level, because it would be expected that they would obey the king's decree. Um, they wouldn't even really know about the Most High, and they would just be more so willing to go along with this plan. Um, we'll see later on. Maybe I'll just say it right now, that where it says here, this is one of the other things that some of those people have brought out. Um, where it says that they are lively. The Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively. This word is, it's actually whenever you look at it in the actual Hebrew scriptures, that's the word chayot. And Shola, my Hebrew teacher friend, we both know that word means animals. I don't know if you want to amen that, but um, so they could be saying that unlike these Egyptian women, these women are animals, and they deliver their children before we even make it there. And saying that, not to, it would be derogatory, but it would also kind of cover them from getting in trouble with the king. I'm not necessarily of that opinion. I think I'm of the opinion that they are actually Hebrew women. I don't really know if Hebrew women would be able to have Egyptian midwives. Like, why would they be, if they were Egyptian, like, why would they, like the servant? And, it seems like the Hebrew women would be more so a midwife to the Egyptian women, as opposed to, vice versa. And of course they have Hebrew names. So I don't know. I think it's interesting though, because it's not really given what type of people these women came from. But I think it's kind of interesting to look into that, to think about it some whenever we're thinking about who they are, because there's not too much about them that's given, and it just makes things more interesting, at least to me. Now, if the women were Hebrew, it would mean that they were experiencing oppression, and so they may have been expected to, excuse me, to have a harsh, to have this regard of the harshness of their lives, and they may have went along with the king's decree, because again they would not want the harshness to continue into the next generations. We think about even like whenever the slaves were coming over here from Africa to America, they would like literally kill themselves and their children, drown themselves in the ocean, just to avoid um, just to avoid um, being enslaved in America. So it's not a foreign necessarily idea that if they were Hebrew, that they would go along with Pharaoh's decree potentially. Um, but if they were Egyptian, I guess the other argument is they would be way more likely to go along with Pharaoh's decree. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know if anybody else was like, oh my goodness, that's like, I really kind of enjoyed thinking about, like, kind of like, I definitely made like a pro and con category, and was putting like, okay, that would make sense, that wouldn't make sense. And that's kind of like a summary of it. Okay, yeah, so Shola said it also means living too. It's an awesome perspective. Okay, go ahead. I heard a mic unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, Salika, I was trying to find where I raised my hand at. So, as you were speaking, I would be more inclined to believe that they was Hebrew. And then you sort of touched on the comment that I would have made is like, that how would Pharaoh know who these women were, right? And I think that he had he may have had some contact with them, which would lead me down the path to say that to be inclined to think that they were Hebrew women, but they also delivered the Egyptian babies. Or maybe even they may have been known to be like the best Hebrew midwife. And then, Pharaoh would want the best. So that's how he would have came to know specifically these two women.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. Shola, you're up.
You got it over there, but you supposed to go right over there. Always back there.
And
Yeah.
Emma Rochelle,
Right there,
you're off mute. I don't know if you know.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Carla, are you able to mute Emma
Can you hear me
Rochelle?
now?
Okay, good, thanks. Yep, I can. Oh, yep,
Something's
I can
going
hear
on
you.
with my mic. Okay. That's a really good perspective from the perspective of the midwives being Egyptians, and that's the first time I've actually heard that perspective in regards to the word chayot. Um, uh, but that word can mean animals. It can also mean female animals. It can also mean living, right? So that's a really interesting perspective when you look at it from the perspective of the Egyptians possibly being the midwives. But just to piggyback off or land back, we don't say piggyback, but to land back off of what Ima Davaria was saying, regarding the midwives in verse 15. Is it 15 or 13? 15. Where it says the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, and um, there's a word of which. So he wasn't just speaking to these two women. He's speaking to a multitude of women and giving them a charge. But it's these two that stand out because of what they became known to do. So that that could work in the favor of of them being Egyptians, or of course build upon the story that we know them as being Hebrews. Um, so just wanted to add that of which leads me to believe that he's speaking to multiple midwives, not just Shiphrah and Puah, but their story is special because of how they were able to save so many babies alive.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm literally trying to switch my screen real quick. Let me see. I'm going to share this. All right, so I have the interlinear, and then you can see here the of whom, which is what Gaveret Shula was saying. Of whom is right here. So the Hebrew, to the midwives, Hebrewesses, the Hebrewesses, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the second one, Hashanit, is Puah. Yeah, I'm so because it's not really given too much. Like I enjoy just taking it all in and thinking about it and understanding it. Because another thing that I kind of threw in my pro of being Egyptian category is that when we see Moses going before Pharaoh, it says that he went before him with an interpreter. But there's no interpreter that's mentioned in this account. Now, I mean, again, Moses is going before Pharaoh was way more significant towards the entire, understanding what that scene looked like. This could just be a very like a simplification of what happened. But it's just something to think about. Who are these women, right? Um, but we can also go ahead and think about their names. Um, let's just think about their names very quickly here. So both of their names are just interesting to me because when I was looking into it, I really could not believe that both of their names kind of have a similar type of a meaning. So I'm going to share another screen. I'm doing too much on it without having a second monitor. I'm being a little bit like Ebony right now because she's like the
You're
chief.
doing awesome, sis.
She's the chief of like sharing screens and stuff like that. But this is a root of the word for Shiphrah. And this is from the word study. And it means, her name means brightness or clearness. Something that's bright and clear. And then there's one verse here: God clears the skies with his breath. I don't think I ever, that has like such great scenery. Like I can just think about what that looks like. So brightness. And then I'm going to share another thing for Puah. And this is, I'm going to share it. There it goes. Okay. So with Puah, meaning glitter or brilliancy as well. And so, both of these women have like these interesting names that both mean like bright, shiny, glittery, clear, clarity. Um, and of course, like we only have so much in this story to really think about and grab hold of. And so I'm just like, I was kind of wowed by the fact that both of their names kind of mean the same concept because, when I think about brilliance, I think about light. And I think about that, the fact that he is light. The scripture says there's no darkness in him. I think about Yeshua saying he's the light of the world, and I think about us as believers in him, that we're lights as well and that we're not supposed to hide, right? So if they are these lights and these instruments of life, right? And we also connect life to light because John 8 verse 12 says, then spake Yeshua again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So we can see that connection between light and life. And just thinking about the fact that these women, this is what they are, like the things that they're called to do, right? And so what happens when Pharaoh comes and orders them to do some deeds of darkness? Are they going to forsake the light and who they are in order to follow after, these evil deeds? I don't care if they're Egyptian or Hebrew, who they are isn't going, and who Yah created them to be isn't going to supersede the orders of Pharaoh. And I do want to pause there and ask anyone if they want to step up and make any comments or anything of that nature. All right, Cicely, I saw you came off mute. And she went back on mute. Okay.
Sis, I had just one thing and I actually put it in the group chat, but when I'm thinking of these women, I see like professional women, like just the meaning of their names. I'm seeing women doctors that are helping other women give birth, you know, because it is a light. Light is equivalent to life. And so in their profession, they're using this profession to use it to bring forth life, to bring forth light. Even in the process of giving birth, you know, there's the darkness that the baby's going through, the canal, then through the birth it comes to light. So um yeah, I see these women as being like wise women, like doctors, professionals, because they even say that there's some comparison. So I guess when we can't really confirm they're if they're Hebrew, but they've experienced different types of women having babies or giving birth, because they can compare the Hebrew women that when they have them, they're saying like they're just different. These women are different um compared to, something else that they've seen.
Yeah, holy yeah, 100%, 100%.
Can you hear me, Tiffany?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is there any evidence in the scriptures that speaks of Hebrew women actually being midwives to the Egyptians?
I don't believe so at all, no. I don't I
Yeah,
don't
I was,
I don't believe that. I don't believe that exists in the scripture.
yes, I think that may kind of allude a little bit towards your point of them being Egyptians. I was just thinking about, I wonder if the opposite had happened. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, so, when I'm thinking about the just kind of the time that they're in right now, and how they're going through. I mean, I'm just gonna assume that they're they're Hebrew. I'm sorry. I'm biased, y'all. I'm biased. I'm on the Hebrew. I'm on the Hebrew side of the team at this point that they were Hebrew. But I'm not ready to come off. I'm not ready to come off that team. I've been on that team this whole time, and then looking and studying this, then I was like, "Oh." And then I was like, "Okay." I did open it up though. I did open it up. Open my mind up to it. But I think about it this time, just think about it. How they Israel doesn't really know yet that they're on the winning team. You know what I mean? Like they're caught up in the moment. Just like I was caught up in the moment when I was um at our gathering that Shabbat whenever I was talking with Carletta and all these things was happening, these crazy things was going on. You know, I mean it was okay. No, I can't even make the comparison. They're in like a way worse situation than that. But there's like no like hope for them. Apparently they can't just leave, right? Or I don't know, maybe they didn't want to leave, but I mean they apparently can't leave. They're under harsh bondage. Um Pharaoh is like just doing whatever he wants to do, um, and just increasing their bondage and their labor. And they don't know yet of the power of the Most High. They don't find this out until till a long time after this. And so, they don't like what do they have to fear? Like what do they have to grasp at um, you know, to think about to fear or to have faith or to have hope. And so when I think about that in all of these situations, and I think about all of the brick and the mortar and the oppression that they're going through, and just the continual and the repeated bad, bad reports. The world is just literally against them. Where are they at right now? Are they at seeking Yah, fearing him? Can't even say keep his commandments. The commandment wasn't even given yet. They don't have any holy days, right? Sure, they was not celebrating any Shabbats, because Yah brings that out even whenever they come out of Egypt. He talks about that. They are literally people who you would think would be without hope, and yet they still had hope. I want to get back to that. But if we look at verse 16, Pharaoh says that when the women deliver upon the stools, if you see it as a son, kill him. But if it's a daughter, you shall let her live. And so we could just see that his goal of even using the birth stools, where you say, oh, it's a boy, or oh, it's a girl, is to use that even as an instrument of death. This world will take every single thing, doesn't really matter if it's an instrument of life or of death, and will make it into an instrument of death if we allow it. Um, and his goal is to destroy the family, the household. He's going after the boys that can grow up and become these mighty warriors and can build households. And the continuance of the nation. He's going after these people to try to kill them before they can even breathe their first breath of life, right? And so how does Yah handle this? And how do these midwives handle this? If we look in verse 17, it says the midwives feared Elohim and didn't do as the king had commanded, but saved the men children alive. What did they do? It says here, save the men children alive. They continued their life, which is really what their job as midwives are. It's to help women continue life. So instead of continuing in or being afraid of Pharaoh and killing those children, they ended up fearing Yah and not obeying those decrees. So keeping alive is actually the opposite of death and killing. We talked about Pharaoh and the fear that Pharaoh had, it caused him to oppress. But the fear that the midwives had of Yah, it caused them to have mercy, compassion, and to save life, which is literally the opposite of what fear and Pharaoh did. So, I think when I take this to our present time, I think that we have to understand that what we fear, we become subject to, right? And so it's important to confess our fears and our hopelessness to Yah so that he can lift us up out of it. Because I'm pretty sure that Pharaoh didn't just say, I want you to kill all these male children. I'm pretty sure he said, and or else at the end, right? In fact, when they didn't do it, they got called back to Pharaoh. It wasn't like, oh, you just didn't do your job that I told you to do. He held them accountable, and he said, why have you done this thing and saved the men, children alive? Why? Look at this, alive. You kept them alive. You saved them alive. Why did they do that? It's because that's who they were. They didn't change because of Pharaoh. They didn't change because they were oppressed. They didn't change because it didn't seem like Yah was coming to help them get out of this situation. It didn't change because it seemed like things was getting worse and we might as well just go with the flow and maybe we'll get some kickbacks from Pharaoh. You know, they didn't stop being brilliant and light and having clarity and focus of mind and having one mind. I think about clarity, I think about single-mindedness. If I have clarity of mind, which it doesn't seem like I have all the time because I'm thinking about so many things all the time with my kids, literally sometimes having 3 conversations at once. I don't even know what's going on. I'm answering wrong questions to this child because this child's asking me a question. I don't get this clarity of mind very often. In fact, that's why my door is locked right now, okay? But I'm saying that when you have clarity of mind and you're single-minded about something, nobody can knock you off of the thing that you're single-minded about. And so these women was single-minded about Yahweh. They were single-minded about life. They were single-minded about continuing life. It didn't really matter what the circumstance they was in or the oppression that they was experiencing. They had a mind that was set on continuing these people alive. And when they were called to account, they said, because these women are alive, they're lively, right? We're not going to talk about causing death for these women or for these people. It's all about life. Like I keep seeing this word in this account. It's all about life and keeping them alive. I don't know if it was true that every time they got there, it already happened and it was done. But it don't really matter if it was true or not. They was not doing it. And so there wasn't going to be a time that they was going to do it, that they was going to change, who they was, which was being an instrument of life and of light, of brightness, of glitteriness, of clarity. They wasn't going to become double-minded and go on Pharaoh's team. I see your hand, Talia. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what you were saying. I can see the theme, even like you said in this chapter, of life, and how I believe, based off of this, that Pharaoh saw the importance of the seed. You know, let's cut off and get rid of the man child, because every time we deal harshly with these people, for some reason, they keep increasing. So Father, even in the harshest of moments and times of their life, He still preserved us. He still preserved our seed, and continue to increase us in the most bitter situations. And yet here comes Pharaoh and says, "Well, I need to cut off everything about their livelihood, including their seed, including their generation, including their livelihood," because he understood that the man child has the seed. So I thought that was very intriguing that even he saw the importance of not just preserving the seed, but if I'm to deal with Israel to the point of almost making them be under submission to him, I gotta cut the man child off. I gotta cut that seed off somehow. And he just
You kind of faded out. I don't know if you were done talking. Oh, you went back on mute. Okay. I think you cut yourself off on mute like right before your last word. Uh-oh. Okay, if you're talking, I can't hear you. All right. Sorry, Talia. I'm not able to hear you. You might have to go out and come back in. Ebony, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just got curious about the part where it said because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. I wonder what the reputation of the Egyptian women were about giving birth. I wonder what their practice. I know we're kind of like off of this whole part of like if they're Egyptian or not. But I'm just curious, what was the rumor mill about these Egyptian women giving birth? What because I'm under the impression, right, especially like in today's climate of just going natural or unmedicated, you just assume that everyone is going to have a similar unmedicated natural vaginal delivery. So I'm just curious what their practices were and why the Egyptian women weren't lively.
Yeah, they were probably wailing. They wasn't like you, Ebony. Let's just say that. Because I've talked to Ebony when she was in labor. She be getting into the zone. I don't even know. She literally talking to herself, coaching herself through. I believe, I know Cicely was there when Naomi was born, but I believe you had Naomi in the tub by yourself, right? You didn't even know you was in labor. You was driving around like literally an hour before you gave birth.
So I am cracking up over here. I am cracking up. Yeah, but that's true though. You said facts. Those are facts. So I guess maybe I'm just thinking from my own perspective. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. I was just curious why the Egyptian women weren't lively. Would you consider yourself not lively after having it? No, yeah. Never mind.
I probably was like the Egyptians. I probably was wailing and carrying on, like, I'm about to die. Actually, every birth I thought I was going to die at some point in the process. I thought the pain was just going to kill me. That was a lot of pain. I'm so happy I never had to go through that again. That's for the next generation and some of the younger sisters on this call who do have to experience that again. Anyway, it's not me. All right. So, okay, I want to keep going because I only have a couple more notes here. I do want to just talk about fear unto Yah. It produces faith, which is a persuasion. It's a mental knowledge. It's an assurance or a certainty that Yah is going to act. But I also want to talk about the word hope, which is a faith that includes a joyful waiting. And so I think about that whenever I think about pregnancy in general. There is a certain level of faith, of confidence that you will have this child. And in the process of that, there is also a hope, a tikva of this expectancy that is going to happen. We don't see, at least it written here, that Israel has a very strong knowledge of what their future life is going to look like. But if you're in a situation of oppression, it's so easy to get excuse me, caught up into depression or into the oppression that you're in, that you lose sight of what the future is going to be. And so I just, when I look at this, that even for these midwives, it came to be that even in the land of their oppression, they had fruit here, that Yah blessed them. And then he blessed them with houses. He blessed them with households, right? Their their fear had a fruit that became even a physical thing that they could experience even in the land of their captivity. So I think it's very important for us that even if it's just having peace of mind when no one else has peace of mind, that's fruit of hope that we have in the Most High. We have to keep on believing, keep on striving, keep on hoping in him, keep on faithing and believing. It doesn't really matter what we're going through. We talked about people who have cancer, people who have different illnesses, people who have lost things or lost people. It doesn't really matter what the situation and the circumstances are. If we only base off of that, then we could be losing the entire future that is before us if we base our understanding of things on what are tangible things that we presently have. Now, verse 22. Excuse me. This always makes me laugh because Pharaoh kind of gave up on that idea of killing the boys on the birth stool. He said, "You know what? This isn't working out. Plan B. Plan B. We're going to go ahead and tell all the people to cast any son that's born. So you had the baby, couldn't kill them at the birth stool. The next best thing is to kill them whenever you see the baby." And gave that edict to all his people to do. It's just so interesting, right? That he says to throw them into the river, the Nile River, which is also an instrument of life. It's like he just doesn't understand. Like, you can't use instruments of life and turn these things into instruments of death. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. So he does that, right? And what happens? What does Yah do? He redeems the river, because the deliverer of Israel, he goes into that river and he comes out, right? He's literally his whole name is because he was taken out of this river of life that was made into an instrument of death by faith. I don't know. I'm getting excited, y'all. It is just, to me, it's just fascinating how Yah uses, how he does things, and how if we get so caught up on present situations that we can miss out on, like, kind of the big picture of what Yah is doing, right? It's just it's just fascinating to me. And I think that it's through these situations that we go through, that we actually learn about the fact that Yah is a sustainer of life. And that kind of gives us, or it does give us, courage to begin. And I would say that people who've never been through anything, they haven't even been born yet. You know? Well, Yossi may have been born already. Because he may have been through some little things. I don't really know. But unless you really go through things in life that kind of activate faith and hope in you, the question is, like, have you actually even experienced, like, life, continuation of life? I lived through something. You kind of hear people say that sometimes, right? Yah has for us to live through things, not to die in those things, but to continue and grow and live, to make it to the next mountaintop. Hallelujah. If we're in the valley, we're going to make it to the next mountaintop. We just have to have hope, that, we're going to get there. So anyway, I think that's really all that I had, in my notes. I also said Yah has for you to shine, but you have to go through some things to experience the fullness of the birth process that Yah has for you. So we're going to shine, but, it might not always be, it might not always look favorable to us when we're going through, different things in our life. So I want to go ahead and, if anyone has any, I don't want to say what my husband says, any final thoughts, questions, comments, go right on ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say something. I apologize for not raising my hand. I don't know where it is on this thing here.
It's okay. It's okay.
But also, I was thinking about the word bright. Bright also could mean something like a quick thinker, the ability to think on your, real quickly.
Yeah. I mean, Pharaoh it says he said, let's deal wisely with them. And the women he called upon was even more wise and shrewd, than he was. They were very quick thinkers, and you figure they came before Pharaoh and they weren't afraid to tell him that they didn't do what he said for them to do. And they got off on it too, which is also it's just interesting. That whole story is just really interesting that he wasn't like, off with their heads. Like he literally was like, all right, plan B. Let's throw them in the Nile. Like he just kind of moved on to the next plan. Like he just, I don't know. Maybe he was like, I don't know what to do with these women. Let's just scrap that and go ahead to plan B. So yeah, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say there's two different fears we're looking at here. The Hebrew sisters, our midwives, are in fear of Yahweh, fear and reverence. And so they're being obedient in their fear, that has caused, they know the Most High, they have a relationship, they know um the righteous way, and so that causes them to be obedient, to give life. And then we see fear on the other side, which is the Pharaoh. And this is causing him to be completely reckless. Like you said, he's just like plan A. Okay, that's not working. Plan B. He's just coming up with different ways. Recklessness. That's what fear causes. Recklessness. It causes you not to to think so clear. It's actually two different opposites that we're looking at here. So clear thinking and bright thinking and being smart and wise in your decision making, and then we see, just off the top of your head, you're just thinking like throw the babies in the water, like you said, that it's not going to work. It's not going to work. um fear does so many things. I was talking to somebody about this a few weeks ago. Fear is something. I say once you are in a state of fear one time, you will never want to go back. You recognize those feelings. Um, you'll never want to put yourself in that predicament again. Um, it's like a warning. Like you see the warnings and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. You know. And so I just wanted to bring out those the two opposites of the fear. We have two different fears that we're looking at here.
Yeah, and I think about when I think about the beginning of like this whole narrative in Exodus, I think about, of course, the midwives, and I went back like videos, like three videos back, and this is just something to always bring out about these women. Um, and then the next, two women that we talk about is Jochebed and Miriam. And I always say, and I did a whole thing on Miriam, um, that Miriam was a prophetess, and Moses was a prophet, and Aaron was a prophet. So I'm looking at Jochebed, like how she have three children, all three of her kids were prophets, and she also wasn't in the gift of prophecy as well. And understanding, because it says that when she sees Moses, he's this beautiful child. I think all of my children that come out are beautiful. I think everybody feels that way about their newborn babies. I think that's our whatever, we have those hormones that cause us to feel that way. But it had to go to another point for her to hide him for 3 months, and then another point for her to put him into the Nile, which was the death sentence, put him into the river, right? That's the death sentence. But there had to have been a prophetic element to that, because she put him in the reeds where it's not in the middle of the river. where it's like really crazy and the baby's just gonna go and whatever. It's in the reeds, so the reeds are slowing it down. And Pharaoh's daughter is just like kind of in reach, you know. Um, and then he gets rescued out of this water of death, right? And he's brought, he kind of resurrected, actually, kind of immersed and brought into life. And so I just think about you know, I think about these women that were kind of involved at the very beginning. Um, and you know, just how you think about birth, and it's like, you know, women and all of these different things. And you know, how does the birth of the nation begin without having those women to be part of that process? um and not in like a way of um it's like a way of servanthood towards the Most High, and of sacrifice, and of being willing to lay down their lives, not loving their life unto death, for him. And so, you know, of course, I don't know if these midwives really knew, and had a prophetic vision of what the future was going to behold, but they definitely were connected to the Most High because they feared him, and he obviously was connected to them because he kept them alive from Pharaoh. You know, it's almost miraculous that they didn't get killed in this whole process. Um, Yah kept them alive, and then not only that, but he increased them and brought them into more, and brought them into something within captivity that's fruitful. So I'm not going to say anything else because it's starting to get late, but Shula is definitely up, and then I'm going to go ahead and let Carletta take it over. Go ahead, Shula. We want to hear what you have to say.
I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I'm late, but I'll tell you, this was so good, Tirza. Like so good. And when you brought out the meaning behind Shiphrah and Puah, and that clarity and the brightness and the shining and the glitter, um, I and the clarity again, you know, of the oneness in life, I was thinking again about the refining process. You said that Yah has for you to shine, but the refining process, like you said something like it might not always be pretty, right? And so when you go in to get a diamond, when they go in to pull out a precious jewel, when they find precious metals, they look like they could be dirt or just like another rock, but it's the pressure and the heat, you know, that gets put on them that makes them into these beautiful objects of brilliancy and glory. And I was thinking about I, it just reminded me again like that Yahweh sees us as jewels. He sees us as the gold and the silver and all these beautiful things that are a part of his temple. And I just led to Zechariah 9, um, chapter 16. Yahweh, their Elohim, will save them in that day as the flock of his people, for they are like the jewels of a crown lifted on high over his land. For how great is his goodness and how great is his beauty. Grain will make the young men flourish and the new wine the virgins. So I'm just reminded that Yahweh has a desire to save his people, to beautify his people, for his people to be glorified in his power, in his greatness, in his oneness, in his clarity. Hallelujah. So Todah for that word, Todah Rabbah.
But yes, that word, as we already knew, was gonna be awesome, and it was. Thank you for bringing that out on many points. It gave us something to think about. I love the Hebraic standpoint, the meanings of the names and the breakdown. Um, just a truly blessed word, sis. I appreciate you for sharing this evening.